So, quick round of introduction on the speaker, but before that, for those of you who are here, I guess most of you know each other. It's, yeah, the general population knows each other. So, if you would like to still have a small round of introduction, please use the chat window. Let me keep this interactive. Right, I'm proud to introduce you all to Rajni Dhanwel. Rajni has around 18 years plus of experience in IT field. He has been an enterprise architect and as well as an IT strategist. Currently, he's working as an enterprise architect on a large enterprise project related to digital transformation programs, I believe. And on the digital solution, he has worked on cloud solutions architect role, involving a lot of AI as an artificial intelligence and IoT solutions. In this meetup, he'll be able to provide the structured architectural way of thinking and how TOGAF aids in this process and career path to enterprise architect. Over to you, Rajni.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction, Vijesh. So, yeah, so exciting to see so many of you so interested in architecture and knowing about want to know more about this enterprise architecture in the field. So as Vijay said, I have a good experience in enterprise as an enterprise architect as well as a solution architect. So the architecture, the terminology itself will be it's like it itself has a lot of ambiguity. Sometimes we play a solution architect, sometimes we play an enterprise architect. What's the difference? We will be seeing in this session. So that's what we are going to see. So I'll straight away jump into the agenda. So what we are going to try to see today is like more about what's enterprise architecture, how the companies today are surviving in this pandemic situation. So how the companies are being forced into to go digitalization. So previously, many companies may not be digitalized, but now they have to take a hard look on their digital strategy. Maybe a small startup or it could be a huge enterprise. It doesn't matter. Now everybody are in the same track. They need digitalization. So that's the situation now. So how to prepare an enterprise and or even a startup, think strategically for this kind of situations is what we are going to see that today. So that's what we call it as VUCA. So in the agenda, what I'll be going through is they go through the global scenarios of the VUCA, then about the how industry and the enterprise architectures respond to the VUCA, and then what's the recovery and what's digital transformation, then about the EA roles and values drivers and how EAs respond to VUCA, then about the other architect roles, followed by the EA frameworks, and then about the TOGAF, and then we'll have the question. So straightly I'll move into the first slide.
Yeah. Before you start,
yeah.
Rajni, can you put it to slide mode? So that...
Okay. Yes, Vijay. Yeah.
Thank you. It's too tiny at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Maybe a little bit zoom. Is it fine?
Yeah, should be fine.
Okay. Okay, I'll start with VUCA. So it's a common terminology in the business world, especially the business graduates use this word, but it's been adopted by us also in the IT side also. So what it means is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So all these things really happen. All these IT-wise, the elities they say. So all these elities happen today very frequently. and how the enterprise has to be ready for it. How you, it could be even a sort of startup or whoever it is, how you're going to be ready for this kind of situation today. So how you reacting it? I think like most of the companies who were able to react in this pandemic situation, right, when the first lockdown happened uh, last year, so how they reacted to it and how they came out of it is it's all a learning journey for many of them. So this is VUCA is not like a common thing which is happening just because of the pandemic. It has been always happening for business, but it's really not visible for the IT people may not be, but the business always face these things because IT is in the limited scope. So we don't see the VUCA on the day-to-day life, but we see it just based on the changing requirements. That's all we see. So that's how we would have faced. But it's not just those requirement changes, it's beyond that. So seeing this VUCA situation today, so we can see like I just picked up few things like from the news what we have. So one is from the left hand side is what we have is the it's tiny. I know the image is bit lighting, but the content is what it means is how many people are making the online shopping post COVID-19 than before. So you could see the blue is the increased growth and the pink is the negative growth. So you can see that it's almost blue. So everything is blue. This analysis was done by McKinsey. So I can just zoom in that one, that piece alone. You can see this. So what it shows, so online purchase has increased a lot. So that's what we have ended up, right? Even previously we didn't like to do online shopping because for certain things even I won't like to do the online shopping. I just go there and see the product and then buy it. So you cannot do for everything, right? So we used to, but the things have changed. You can see that online growth has changed. Online purchase growth has changed. So what it means, your IT systems has to be ready, your business has to be ready for these things. So that's what it means, right? The inherent meaning is whether you already have the online shopping in your business. So that's what it means. So so if not, we are going to face this we are in this VUCA situation, right? So that's what it means. So but the world is turning to more online purchase. That's what it shows, the first thing. Second thing I want to show you is another example is um, this is something, an example of this one. Yeah, this is something happened in a company called Cigna, where I worked in US. So it's a health insurance company. So what happened is the IT systems were complex. They didn't have a proper IT team. They just kept on developing whatever requirements come in ad hoc manner. So they kept on developing it. And they were supporting a critical medical support medical product for the Medicare. So Medicare is nothing but for the support for the people who are greater than 65. So that's the systems, that's the business they were doing there. And US had a lot of regulations on this kind of business, healthcare business. As you know, any country will have that kind of regulations, a lot of regulations, right? So they didn't meet the regulations. The systems they had a lot of failures. They didn't have a proper audit process. And finally, and what happened is Cigna lost this Medicare Advantage, Medicare business, and because of the government came up with an iron hand to stop it, because they had so many issues with the systems, with the IT systems specifically. So they were not able to solve it within the time given by by the government. In fact, the government gave around a year long to recover from it, but still they were not able to fix the problem because the in if I assume all of you have an IT background, so what the systems they developed is like, it's like monolithic legacy systems. It was so hard to recover those systems. So ultimately what happened is they lost the business. So it's a huge loss. It was lost in millions. So that's what happened. So again, so why we lost it? We should have had a governance, proper governance to while we build the systems. So proper architecture might not be missing. So those kind of things cause this kind of failures. So nevertheless, there is another example I took from Australia, which is Woolworths. I think you would have heard about it. So Woolworths also had this kind of failure. So when they did an ERP migration, so proper roadmap was not created. So they just started, and before even getting into the preparatory phase, they just started the work. So what happened is they didn't had a proper documentation of their own business process, and even about the details about the existing architecture, existing process, and all those things. So there were a lot of ambiguity was inside there, and also the complex. It involved a lot of complex process. So ultimately, what happened is their migration failed, and they had to do a lot of recovery, and it almost took for a year for them to do the recovery. So all these examples give a message like the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity is cannot be avoided. It's always going to be there, and how we are going to live with it. So it's like COVID, right? Like we have to learn how to live with it by getting vaccinated or protected or keeping your mask on, whatever it is. So that's how. So how to live with it and how to face it is what we are going to see in terms of architecture. So in terms of IT systems, in terms of how we can shield and have our roadmap, our strategies ready for all these kind of situations. I'll move to the next one. So this is another example. Um, is it? Okay. So how industry and EA responds to the VUCA is just a recent example what we have given. So for example, if you see from McKinsey study, so before pandemic, 92% of the people or the CIOs or the CTOs or the C executives of the company wanted to people to come to the office, and only 8% of the people were preferred work from home. And now if you take the ratio, you can see that almost 50% of the people want to do less than 2 days or 3 days work from home, a lot of work from home, and 50% only want to come greater than or equal to 4 days in a week. So now if you see, now you cannot deny the employees wish, right? Like even the government is leaning towards to allowing the work from home as a legal thing. At least in India, it was not a work from home was not a complete legal for companies to do it. So at least they allowed at least 5% to be legal. But after pandemic, what they did is the government also made the flexible that they can even go for 80% of the people to be work from home. So that kind of even government took the changes and all those things. So now again, what it means again. So understanding your employees, they wish more of work from home, and it all means again you have to give the IT facility for them to do the work from home, right? So they need the laptop, not just the laptop, the virtual things, whatever you have to provide, the tools you have to provide, and all those things comes into way. Who is going to provide that? The company. So the company is again like did you have an IT strategy for that to support such a kind of work from home? No, we don't have. Most of the companies might not have. So that's where like some companies who are ahead of these things, who thought about these things, they would have already embraced these kind of virtual work environments. So I know few companies even brought this bring your own device, they call it Boyd, right? So they adopted Boyd kind of culture long back, even 5 years back. But in this pandemic situation, I could see startups taking the desktops, going and delivering it to the employee's house. That's what happened. Literally, they didn't have laptops. There's some companies used desktops, hard desktops, so they had to shift and all those things. So if at all they could have strategized this thing in a little bit better way, it could have been. So they could have been in a better position when this kind of situation arose. So it's not for even for startups. Even in my previous organization, I work for a company called Cognizant. So they are also like what happened is even during the pandemic situation, it's such a huge company. They have around 150K employees, and at least 50K employees had computers, the desktop computers. So they had to shift all these computers to their home place. So think about the huge kind of shifting and other things, and also the providing the virtual tools and all kind of support. So it was in the last minute they had to respond all these kind of things. So that's one thing. Second thing is today what Gartner's also saying, like some of the board directors are thinking now how to accelerate the digital business post COVID, because now they understand the digitalization is very 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 important. So otherwise they cannot survive this whole business. So that's what so what enterprise architects today has, what it means is to accept this kind of changes today. Whatever the changes today may not be applicable tomorrow. And also enterprise architecture means they should be adaptive and agile to all accommodate all these things, anticipate and embrace changes where whichever comes on the way, and apply agile and MVP methods. So where we will apply, how we would have thought all these things in an organized way, uh, is what we are going to see in the upcoming slides. How we solve these things, how we respond for this kind of VUCA is going to be, which is what we are going to see. Okay, so this one, yeah, this is better. So this one you can see like the recovery is digital. So the next normal is going to be the recovery will be digital. That's what everyone realizes, and every business has realized it, and you would have also seen that. So industry 4.0 is something like it's like a it's a version about the industry standard itself. So the 4.0, what they say is the capabilities what we have to build is. So what it means is the whole industry framework itself, it means is you have to be ready for that kind of framework, because people are moving towards the 4.0 framework. All the companies around you are going to move towards the 4.0, and you cannot lie there idle with 2.0 or 3.0 framework. So 2.0, 3.0 is not strictly you follow the framework, it is about the capabilities what your enterprise has. So 4.0 framework, what they define is, so people are going to have a lot of data, computational power, connectivities, connecting with devices. It could be internet of things. I mean, cloud technology, blockchain, and all those kind of things. So those kind of things are going to happen. So that's where people are moving towards. And then a lot of analytics and intelligence from the data. So you would have seen in COVID itself, taking the results of the COVID and the spread details and other things. A lot of analytics developed, and they were able to tell the pattern when the so initially you would have seen when the first wave would come and when they will subside. The prediction was a little bit off. Nowadays they are able to give a more accurate prediction, and it's happening more close to what they predict. So that's the analytics is being intelligence is being built. And also big data, huge amount of data is coming into this play, because think about, like, it's not just your country, your region, it could be about the worldwide effect, right? Like the COVID data. So people are studying about the whole worldwide data, so which is going to be a huge amount of data, which is called big data. So that kind of huge amount of data has to be processed and studied, and analytics has to be done, is what people are moving towards. And then about uh, um, the last thing what they're saying is, like, we are going to have about like a lot of robotic process automation, chatbots, and even like artificial intelligence. All those kind are going to be in the play. So what it means is industry 4.0 is going to be the new norm soon. So whether your company is ready for it is what we have to see. So that is what is like, you have to digitalize at speed and scale, is what they suggest. So how to bring the digital transformation? So digital transformation, before even getting into what is digital transformation, first we need to know the definition of digital transformation. So digital transformation, you can say, like, already in my office or my enterprise, my company, things are already digitalized. So what else is to be digitalized? It's whether digitalization means moving my things into modern software or into cloud. Is that what it means? It's not that completely. It's about your business process. So there could be a lot of business process out there without knowing to be manual, that could be automated. So that could have been made digitalized. So many things could have been done still in the manual way, or systems could not be integrated and all those things. Especially I've seen this things happening in the sales department. You could have seen that, like, the salesperson will be out there in the market and on the field, and the information they collect might be still manually fed into the systems once they come back. So those kind of things can be transformed. That process itself can be transformed, right? If at all we provide a mobile app to them, and they will be able to key in there, and all automatically the systems are integrated, that's a digital transformation. That's an example of digital transformation. So the other example which I could give from my work experience is, like, so what we do is, I work for an engineering company now, like called Rambol. So what we do is we do architecture in architectural designs for huge dams, buildings, bridges, and all those kind of things. So what we do is for maintenance, we have set up we in the past, what they do is an engineer or a technician just goes to the place and visits every place, and he notes down the problem and things, and then they fix it. It was very tedious, so it cannot be done for huge dams, or the for the bridges and other things. So what we came up with, they came up with the idea of the Internet of Things. So they started using sensors, and the sensors will do the sensors could be not just readings of physical things happening there. For example, if you take a bridge, it might swing a lot, so those things can be measured by sensors. And there could be cameras which will be taking images of the bridge, but the part where they are focused on. All these things have been these kind of things have been taken, and that is being fed in digitally to the systems. I'm not getting into those details technical. Maybe I can do it in another session if you want. But those in digital information is being transformed and comes to your desk, and the engineer is able to see from the results what's going on there in the bridge, and they can take the necessary action accordingly. So that kind of thing is called digital transformation. So in the pandemic, you're not able to go to the place to the literally physically, but you will be able to see your your structures, how it is functioning, what's the problem, when is it going to break, when you have to take action. All these things can be done just at your desktop. So that's called digital transformation. So not just computerizing or just moving your stuff to cloud, or modernizing your applications is not just digital. It's more of changing your processes. They're changing your mindset, how you're seeing things, and things like that is what digital transformation. There are many ways to do the digital transformation. One such way is what I have displayed here. I'm not getting into the too much details of how digital transformation topic, because it's a so altogether a separate topic. But having said that, so, the I want to say that if you see in this graph, this pie diagram, you can see like the contributors for a digital transformation. So the digital change lead, who is nothing but the enterprise architect, and the CTO and the CIO, who is the sponsor, could be the center one. So they work with all these people, the business owner C, with the IT specialist, the data engineers, data scientists, translator, whoever it could be. It could be across the teams, across your organization. But the center G is the governance. G is for governance. So which will be the enterprise architecture team, who will be able to do this thing. So because they are the one who can understand both business process as well as the technology. To the next slide. Okay, this one. So what I want to say here is the pandemic has already shined the spotlight on CTOs and the CIOs and the enterprise architects. So what it means is, previously the CTOs and CIOs of a company or the enterprise architects were seen to be like to be a investment, and just to take care of their IT systems and keep it running and other things. But now the way the CEOs look at the CTOs and CIOs and the enterprise architects is different now. They are now looking at the return of investment. So what they are expecting is, what can you do digitally and get me some revenue out of it? That's what they're looking at these guys and asking us. So because the business is so tight, so they need their goals and their margin to be achieved. So now the CIOs, CTOs, and the enterprise architects are also in a position, not just they traditionally what they do, just running the systems, running the IT systems up, keeping it always up, not to have any downtime. All those kind of things were the goals. But now the goals have changed. What can I do digitally? What can I convert it digitally? So that will create an impact on the revenue. So it could be a revenue savings, or it could be a revenue income itself. So for example, revenue savings is nothing but, let's say we migrate everything to the cloud instead of the data center, having a data center, running it on our premise. Why don't I move that to the cloud? So making the cost effective. So that's going to generate some revenue out of it. So most of the organization take that kind of strategy, because once you move to the cloud, you're going to have you're going to cut the cost at least 50% by what you run on the on-premise. So that's in that way you show a revenue there. So that's how the enterprise architects show the revenue there. Or it could be something like coming up with innovative ideas, like a study, or maybe your business has some a lot of amount of data out there about the customer or about the product or about whatever they have done. Do a lot of analytics over there, get the value out of it and provide the value out of it, and how it can be sold and made revenue. So interestingly, I can quote another example which I saw. So what in our company, what they used to do is, in our experience, what I saw is they had a tie-up with a company who does the study about the underground water. So what they did is, so this government had this underground water study company. They had these devices being fit in over certain, in a region they will be fitting it all over, like in certain crucial places they will fit that. So they will always measure the underwater level and also the quality of it and all those kind of. This device was is like a freeware device. Anybody can pick up the data and use it for the study. So I saw the company, like, we use this data, we created analytics over this data, and they were able to create a value out of it, and that was sold to universities and schools who do the research. So that way, like how enterprise architects think, or the solution architects think about it. So getting the data out of free, do an analytics, which is what the analytics could be your strength of your enterprise or your company. Do that kind of analytics, get the value out of it, and then they were able to sell this value to the schools and colleges who are doing research on it. So that's the way, like, now the enterprise architects and the whole the technology stream has been seen, like, not just running the IT systems, make the revenue for me. That's what it is. Okay, now I think technology influence now starts to drive the business. So enterprise architecture is, I think, like, I would have understand. So enterprise architectures act as a bridge between the CEOs, the COOs, the CFOs, and also between the CIOs, CTOs, and the CDOs. So all this is traditionally the business used to drive the technology. That was the approach. Now the technology is influencing the business a lot. So initially, when you do something manually, now you have the technology. You have to shift your mindset to think like, uh, to use the technology instead of doing it in a manual and or in a traditional way. So that's what it enterprise architecture team influence you there. So for example, like, let's say, like, so the way which I said, right, like, so instead of having a person visit directly or technician visiting directly the place, how could you use your technology, like using sensors, using photos, you're using cameras, take the photos and all those things. So they do the photogrammetric analysis and all those kind of things. Using technology is going to save you money. That's what the CEOs and CFOs are going to ask you, like, I have this business, how could I save money? So you can come up with this kind of solutions and all those things. So what it means is, how technology is going to influence the business. So we are gaining, the enterprise architecture team is gaining more and more value. Their value has been realized now more and more in the enterprises, and so that's where we are act as a bridge between these things. So apart from that, so next is, like, what is this enterprise architecture, what the value drivers, what they bring, how this team always work in the enterprise, right? So usually the three things which I have seen always the enterprise architecture work is, it's one is on the strategy. So strategy is nothing but the business strategy could be there, IT strategy could be there. So IT strategy is nothing but, so once the business creates the strategy, we create the IT strategy based on that. So business will have their strategy, their capabilities, their process. So all these three things will be there. And based on this, you create your IT strategy, you create for those business capabilities, we create the corresponding IT services. And for this business process to be executed, we create the corresponding technologies, all those things. So the enterprise architecture team plays a major role in this part, like creating the IT strategy and all those things. So as I work as a strategist in part of my job, so what we do is, so we study the business strategy and we see how the IT strategy has to be laid for the next 5 to 10 years, how we do have to define the roadmap and all those things. So once we So we help in creating this kind of IT strategy, which will help you to respond on the kind of situations like VUCA. So whenever you have that kind of situation, if you have your IT strategy to be aligned with VUCA, that you will be automatically able to respond for it. So for example, think about it, like today we had, as I said, like we had this office culture has been slowly brought down, right? So now we have to come up with a virtual workplace. How we are going to build that? There are so many solutions out there in the market, so we should have start looking into the virtual workspace and all those things slowly now, because this is going to be a new normal. So those kind of things, IT strategy might not be in your past IT strategy, but you have to create your new strategy and get aligned all those things. So that's where the enterprise architecture team creates the value and brings in the insight for for the for the management, the CEOs and the CTOs, CEOs. Next thing is governance. So they play a lot of role within the lot of role of a lot of governance within organizations. So for example, it could be what technology has to be used within the company. That's whitelisting and contribute a lot to the innovation. How to optimize your existing systems, consolidating your existing systems, breaking down your monolithic systems into manageable systems, vendor management, and whenever there is a merger and alliance, you do the due diligence. All these kind of things, the enterprise architecture team gets involved and they create the value for it. So that's what we cover, the governance. And finally, the execution, nothing but it could be a program execution, it could be a project execution, or even a production support and other things. So all these leads to, so the enterprise architecture team provides value on all these three key things. These are I think any activity within an organization can be summed up within these three. So strategy, governance, and execution. So the ultimate goal is to either create the revenue or save money for it. So ultimately the revenue generation has become the key role for the enterprise architecture. Next is about the EA digital transformation and the VUCA response. So traditionally, like what we used to do is the digital transformation response. We had the EAs usually engage with the top executives and do the emphasis on the strategic planning and focus on the business outcomes. You skip those were the key priorities, but having this VUCA response, now the enterprise architecture team also has changed their their roles. I mean, not the role, like the activities what they do. So now it's like they do it everything short, fast, and focus. So it doesn't mean that quick, dirty, and unplanned, but it should be quick and short and fast and focused way of delivery. And we should have a good plan. The enterprise architecture teams would have to have a good planning, constant scanning of the enterprise, what is needed for the company, what is going to face, and all those things, and the ability to quickly respond to the changes. All those things has to be built in. So how you build these things? So the EA stream has a lot of way to do those things, which you are going to see. And also a clear team ethics, a solid plan B. Always the enterprise architecture always should have a plan B. What if happens like something is down? What is the plan B? So all those things we always have to consider. And an optimistic VA to can do attitude, because technologically today most of the things are possible. So we should have that optimistic way of doing it. That's how the EA team does that. And finally, the policy of rewarding people, deploying agile ways of working, and team with the right mix of people. So all these things, the EA team helps in the VUCA response. All those things we do. How we do that is what we are going to see soon. And since we have time constraint, I'll quickly move on to another one. Yeah, that's the next thing about the enterprise architect's mindset and skills. So the new mindset is like, so we have to understand a lot of complex things. Enterprise architects should have a good way of communication skills and all those things, and a lot of analytics and synthetic skills and abstraction and visualization is what required for an enterprise architect. So enterprise architects can translate this abstract concept to the real world examples and visualize ideas in engaging and interactive ways. That's what business loves that. So that's what we automatically we get into that kind of we build that quality as you work as an enterprise architect. And also you will be able to see, you will be able to have an eagle's eye view on your whole enterprise, as well as you will be able to see the details also. So it's like it's like the enterprise, if you consider it's a 100-story building, and in the top floor you have the CEO, CEOs, and the down floor the operating team. Enterprise architects move on the lift from all these floors. The top floor could be the CEO or the CEO. The middle floor could be business. The third floor could be the project management. Fourth floor could be the second floor could be the developers, and lastly the operations. So the enterprise architect team, if you think about them, they travel on a lift between all these floors, and they will be able to interact with all these people and get the ground problem, and they will be able to handle it very well. So that's the mindset architect should have. So not just interacting on the top of the ivory tower, but moving across the ivory tower with all the floors. So next is architecture roles. I'll quickly say about there are at least 3 major classifications we have. One is the enterprise architects, next is the solution, and the last one is the technical or domain or system or platform architects. So the enterprise architects is one works across the strategy. So you can see they will be spread across all the solutions of the company. So they work on the strategy, on the holistic solutions, large programs, and other things. Solution architects are who work on many solutions but focused on certain programs or projects. So they will be providing the solutions for the programs and projects and certain initiatives, whatever you do. So they will be more focused, and they act as a bridge between the technical architects and the enterprise architects. So lastly, the technical architects are nothing but like it could be any architect of it could be an application architect working for a particular system or for a particular application. Technical architect is something like, for example, sometimes even you have your support systems, they have an architect, right? Like if you have your Outlook and other things, there could be an Outlook architect in your team. So the infrastructure side, they are also called architect, right? So those guys fall under the technical architect team. And then lastly, the platform architects, it could be like, for example, your your company could be running a ERP system. There could be a ERP architect there, so he could be called as a platform architect. So those are the different type of architects here. So what we are focusing today is on the enterprise architects who focus on the architect, just on the strategy, the whole IT, the whole enterprise, who has a vision over the whole enterprise and who has a major contribution on the vision and mission of the company. Quickly, we'll go to the next one. So how even though the enterprise architects are able to respond on the VUCA, we are not going to change the frameworks and tools and the what has been developed in the past 2 decades. What it means is there are a lot of frameworks out there, not too many. Only I would say less than 5 frameworks are there out in the enterprise architecture, and the predominant, the famous one is the TOGAF, and then the Zachman. And we have other frameworks like IAF and other things, but it's not taken up the top position, and very few frameworks are out there in the world today. So an ideal EA framework should have a business value measurement metrics and other things. So, and also an initiative model, a maturity model, and an enterprise communication model. What it means is, so the framework should be able to give you should be able to give the value of your business, capabilities of your business, and also even to measure the metrics of your business. An initiative model is how you handle initiatives, how you handle any initiative or any programs within the organization which is coming in, and how is your maturity model is nothing but like how the whole EA team is matured, how the whole the CTO, CIO teams, the technology team is matured. That could be there should be some ways to measure that. That is called EA maturity model. And then finally, the communication language between the enterprise. So how they do that is what is enterprise communication model. It is nothing but you can visualize like the internet site within your company you will have, right? So how that communication has been done, how they the background is EA teams would have played a lot of role to bring that kind of intranet and other things, how the people communicate and other things. So TOGAF is one framework which predominantly the enterprise architects use, and the second was the Zachman framework. Zachman framework, I'll come to that one. Before that, we'll see TOGAF. TOGAF is nothing but a huge framework which will give you an insight about how we can handle a large programs, large initiatives which is coming into the enterprise, and how we can solve it technically. It is just one scope of it. The second scope is how we do the response for the VUCA, which we saw. So we have this framework will give you an organized way of thinking, an organized way of an approach, and considering all these VUCA factors into your life, into your lifestyle and the work, right? So which will help you to consider all these VUCA factors and give the response for it. So everything is, though the things look to be scattered and be shattered everywhere, still if you are able to see it from the using these frameworks and other things, you will be able to solve each piece of the puzzle, and you will be able to assemble it very nicely. So that's how the TOGAF framework helps the companies. And today, most of the companies, large enterprises, whoever have an enterprise architecture team separately, definitely follow the TOGAF. Rarely I've seen like they don't follow the TOGAF. So generally, if they have an EA team, if they have a proper EA team, proper architect team established, they definitely follow the TOGAF. So even without having EA teams, sometimes they follow this TOGAF strategy because it's the easiest way you can define your enterprise in terms of the enterprise language. So you need methodology to define your business capabilities, business process, and then the underlying systems and other things. So that's how this framework helps you. So Zachman framework is what is the other one which I wanted to talk about, a brief introduction about that. So this is, Zachman is another common framework which is helps the enterprise to document their business capabilities, business process systems. So more of the documentation side. So let's assume like you have a capability, and then you will have underlying a process. There could be 10 process for it. Let's say the sales process is there. So sales will have 10 sales process sub processes there, and 10 sub process could be realized by 10 subsystems. So that, and the 10 subsystems could be again, it could be integrated, and that could be where is it hosted, and all those kind of you keep on drilling down, right? So that can be done very well documented if you use the Zachman framework. That's where it is used for. But TOGAF, this Zachman is just a subset of TOGAF, though they are two separate entities. Still, we use Zachman for documentation purpose and other things, which is very minor thing. But TOGAF will give you the way to how to do all these things to handle the large enterprise. How will you document all the capabilities of an enterprise? How you react to the whole VUCA, like how you create the strategies. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the strategy, governance, and execution, everything is being covered with this TOGAF framework. So once you start using it, you will be able to cover all these things, all these three things. So which is a huge areas, right? Like if you think about strategy itself, there would be a huge area of response for it. And you need a guided framework for that. That's what TOGAF gives you there. Even though it is like 15, 20 years old, it kept on maturing. The framework has matured and other things. And certain things don't change, right? It's like the light and sound. It doesn't change. So that's what this TOGAF is like. The basics are going to be common. So that's not been changed for a while. So when, if you want to become a enterprise certified enterprise architect, right? You, most of the time they will ask for you whether you know TOGAF. So the current version is 9.2, but in general they call it as 9. Till TOGAF 8, it was like you have to keep on renewing your license, but post 9 version, you don't need to renew your version. So it's an open group architecture framework, so any company can adopt it and use it for free. It's not a paid framework. But to get certified on that one, it is a paid one. And the important thing which I wanted to showcase here is, like, you can see, like, the such an enterprise architecture, the certifications done today, the count is only 111k roughly. So it's very less in number. You can see people who have got certified, but the today the IT industry is running with millions of people, millions of engineers, developers, programmers, all sort of business people, all sort of roles and peoples are doing. But you can still see the lack of 100k is not meeting the demand. So there is a huge demand for the enterprise architecture over there, and those who completed are very less in number still. And it's been a long time. This number has not changed much. It keeps on it's around for 15 to 20 years now. The you can see the count is still 100 plus k. So that shows, like, the complexity of the examination also, as well as the concepts, and not just the exam concept, but think about the concept, it brings in value. So it's huge concept which brings in value, which because an organization requires all these three things: strategy, governance, and execution. So those so many topics have been covered there. So that's why it's people are um, it needs a lot of dedication to complete it. That's what it shows. Like that's the challenge about it. Quickly go to the details of the exam. Like we have two parts of it, like part one and part two. There will be part one. Both are like you have just multiple choice questions you have to select, and the part one they call it as foundation, and the second one as certified. So you have to complete both exams become to call yourself as TOGAF 9 certified. Otherwise, if you do just the part one, it will be called TOGAF 9 foundation. um, Then for the part one, what we have is there will be a 40% of multiple choice questions, and you 55% is the pass mark. It's a 60 minutes closed book, and graded immediately. And the right side gives you the concepts what they will be covering in the things. So TOGAF itself provides materials for that. I mean, in the sense like they provide the textbooks and the guides and other things for that. Huge textbook, and I think it's a 700-page book and all those things. So book kind of material is there available in the TOGAF site. So that's there. It will so the book will have all these primarily these 11 topics what you mentioned here, and the questions will be based on these topics. So that's what it is. So once you clear the part one, you will get the TOGAF foundation. Um, the next one is the second part. This is like more of conceptual question. So there will be 8 questions. 8 questions will be scenarios. So you will be given 4 answers, and 4 answers will be, there is no wrong answer in enterprise architecture. And as you know, there is always no right. It's not right answer. It is the best answer. So any solution will have its own pros and cons. So that's what they test in the examination. So the best solution what you get to is will be given the higher mark. And if you select the second best answer, you will be given like 75% marks. If you get the third best answer, like I think like 25% marks, and for the last one it's like 0 marks. So that's how they test your scenarios. They give 8 scenarios, and they will test your application knowledge of the TOGAF framework. So all these questions will be based on what we things we saw. How will you react to a situation as an enterprise architect? How will you think through this thing? How we will come through these things? Those are the things which will be tested in this examination. So next, the last one is the learning outcome. So what we see here is like, so in the foundation level, you will learn about the core concept of the TOGAF framework, the Open Group Architecture Framework. The key terminologies is they have something called ADM, the Application Development Model Cycle. It's not like the SDLC, the Software Development Life Cycle. This is more above that. So how you manage the whole large programs and large things happening in your company, those how to manage those things. Then about how to maintain your enterprise continuum, nothing but how to maintain your enterprise assets, which including your software as well as hardware, anything. It could be anything, or even the business capabilities, business process, and all those things. How do you document that, and how you make it centralized? And there are even methodologies and tools, EA frameworks will tell you. Once a new program comes in, you will be able to do the estimation in not more than 5 minutes. You can do that. So those kind of things, even high level, I mean, it's a ballpark estimate. High level can be done, because if you have documented properly in the Zachman way, which I showed, knowing the capability process and the systems involved on this thing. Let's say you're adding a new process in like existing capability, you will be able to drill down which capability, which process, how many IT systems are impacted, how much is impacted, and all those things. So there are tools and things which the framework will support you. In that way, they can even estimate the impact of any initiative quickly, or even at least give them the heat map of how much of the area it could be spread. The impact could be spread, can be estimated in 5 minutes. So there are ways to do that. That's what TOGAF tells you. So when the question comes from the CTO or CEO, we will be able to answer it in 5 minutes. Certified level is give you the how to apply those concepts and other things. I don't want to get reiterated all those things. I'll get directly to the details of the exam. So the TOGAF will help you like 2 parts. If you can take it part 1, part 2 separately, or in the combined. Separately is going to cost you much, and I think combined is $550, and I saw like conversion after applying conversion at approximately 750 Australian dollars. So That's it. Okay, I'll go to the ask. Yeah, we are running short of time. Yeah. Okay, I'll stop here and please ask your questions here.
Thank you, Rajani. See, we don't have a hard stop at 7 per se. You can continue with
Okay.
whoever wants to have their
Okay.
questions answered. We can have it here. I'll be available for some more time.
Sure. That's great. Yeah.
Hey, Rajni, I probably have one question. Maybe it's not a smart question, but when you were explaining architecture, it kind of went through from application architect to solutioning to enterprise to like, it just went back and forth quite a bit. And then I personally used to be a data architect. So I'm just wondering if you go to an enterprise where maybe there is an architecture COE, would you see all of them, or would you see some aligned, or people will be playing different kind of roles, but they're like the T-shaped skill? Like, is a data architect supposed to play application, solution, business? Like, how do you differentiate them?
Yeah. So it's like enterprise architecture is in the top of them, all of them. So we don't manage directly those data architects or the technology architects or anybody. So there will be separate teams to maintain those teams, right? Like, for example, infrastructure, if you take, there will be a lot of infrastructure within that, and we will have a lot of teams within that. How we control all these things is through the strategy, having a common strategy, getting it flown to from the top to bottom, and we pick up the representatives from those teams, and we have them aligned with the enterprise architecture principles about the company's vision and strategy, and that's how we align. For example, let's say as a data architect, your organization decides to be a NoSQL data warehouse. You want to be in the NoSQL world. You don't want to have any SQL anymore. In that case, that's a principle coming from the top, right? So what will happen is enterprise architecture defines that based on whatever the requirements they have. So they define that let's go for the NoSQL world. In that case, it will be flown to the application architects. So the application architects will be created this awareness. Whenever you're creating new applications, try to have this NoSQL for your application. And even if you're transforming, if you're plugging in a new, let's say you're going to add a new storage for your application, go for NoSQL, don't go for the SQL. And this is how it keeps transmitting. So the solution architects also will be made and aware of this one. So all these architects will be made aware of this new policy, and they will be acting towards the common goal. And end of the day, like you can see, everybody will be moving towards the NoSQL goal, which has been set up by the top. So that's how we see. So it doesn't mean the enterprise architect will directly take over the control of a data architect or directly play with that team and interact with them. It's not like that. They will not rule over them, but we control more over the strategy. So it will automatically flows in the downstreams. So that's how we do. And for your second part of question, data architect cannot be in mostly they will be in the data side. They will do the application architect. It's depending on the people skills. So some people it depends on the people who want to change over their architecture skills. It depends on it. Even the enterprise architect would have always been in the past, like an application architect or a data architect, would have grown to the move to the next levels of those things. So it depends on the people interest, but it's not like as such the role. It's not a mixed of both together. It's the separate. It's always separate. That's how I see it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Satya, I almost feel like teasing you into this.
I understand, Jyoti. Yes. Thank you.
The reason I said I feel like teasing Satya into it, because I can't remember what all architecture roles he's playing and he's played. It just feels like he's playing all of them.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think these are all things that you keep on switching. It's not like you can switch on a hat and say, I'm going to be this hat forever. That's not how it works. You keep switching, you keep doing the role like Rajni explained now. So yes.
Exactly. Satya and I were application architect for a large organization in US. We worked together, and in fact, we are application architects at that point of time. And after that,
Yes.
I know he has played a multiple roles. He has so many hats over
I
here.
will not trust the application architect with my data solutions. That much I know.
Yeah.
Hey, green.
Nice to see you, Satya, after a long time.
Same here. I am just recovering from a bout of fever, a week down. So yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
I will stop the recording right now, and then yeah, we can go into informal chat or talk.